our goal is, back to hygiene occupancy, 92% or above. Now, I mentioned that none of the software programs track this. So I'm going to suggest a very simple analog way for any of our listeners to start tracking this in their practice. It is analog. As nerdy as I am, this is something that I recommend you do in an analog basis. Certainly, you could actually digitize what I'm suggesting. But what I'd like you to do is print out a monthly calendar, a blank monthly calendar. Now, I happen to be an Apple fanboy, so my calendar of choice would be an Apple calendar. Use whatever flavor you like, but a blank calendar for the month. And every workday, I want your hygiene scheduling coordinator to enter a fraction. Every workday, in the space of that day on the calendar, enter a fraction. The denominator, the lower number, is the available hygiene appointments that day. The available hygiene appointments that day. The numerator, the top number in the fraction, would be, of those available hygiene appointments, how many were filled. So let's say hypothetically you have 16 available hygiene appointments today. I'm just making up a number to use an example, Naren. If you have 16 available hygiene appointments that day, then the denominator would be 16. And let's say this was a good day and all 16 showed up, or all 16, we somehow ended up filling those spots. Then the numerator is going to be 16 over 16. And that's what we want, ideally. But of course, it may not be that. Maybe 15 over 16, maybe 14. Heck, I hate to admit that this could happen, but let's be realistic. It could be 9 out of 14. Let's hope that isn't the case. But that's how you track that. And then it just becomes an arithmetic equation at the end of the month to look at the available hygiene appointments and compute your percentage, what percent ended up getting filled. And again, that goal is 92% or above. Naren, does that make sense? You're a nerd like me, and you and I tend to gravitate towards technology solutions. But what do you think of my workaround, since we're not getting an easy report from Dentrix, Eaglesoft, Open Dental? What do you think of my workaround?
Yeah, I think it's very practical, Gary, and I know you use it with your clients. So I know it works. So absolutely.
Yes. And now we know, now we know what's actually happened. And it's really important to have data on this, because if you don't have data, if I ask a doctor that isn't tracking this, if I don't have data, how will he or she answer the question? Hey, how are we doing with hygiene occupancy? If they don't have data, Naren, how do you think they'll answer the question?
If you don't have data, they will say, well, I think we are doing well. I think it's a good day. It depends on what happened that particular day. So it's going to be very
answer it anecdotally. They'll answer it anecdotally. Yeah. And they'll tend, human nature is such where it's recency. Yeah. We remember the most recent. Maybe yesterday was a really good day in hygiene, and they think, hey, Dr. Araja, how are we doing with hygiene occupancy? Well, Gary, I think we're doing pretty good. Yesterday, man, everybody showed up. Right. Or conversely, if yesterday was not good, what is the law of recency going to say? If
it sucks.
Oh man, I think we're horrible. And in reality, neither one of those answers is a long enough perspective to really give you accurate reporting.
Exactly.
So you have to have a way to track this, and our simple analog system is a very easy way to do it. Now, let's pivot in this coaching and action segment and start talking about how in the world do you get to 92%. And that really is the gist of this coaching and action segment. So tip number one is I want you to assign a dedicated hygiene scheduling coordinator in your practice. If you have multiple admin team members and all of them are working on this schedule, in other words, all of them are working on doctor's schedule and hygiene schedule, then there's no accountability to the hygiene schedule. And, we like to say, although it's a negative phrase, but I think it's important to say it, if everyone's doing it,
no one is doing it.
The corollary, if everyone's doing it, Naren?
No one is doing it.
No one's doing it. So let's dedicate a team member to be a dedicated hygiene scheduling coordinator. Now, that team member will likely have many, many, many other tasks to do, of course. However, I would like you to make it crystal clear to that person in your practice that their number one priority is to put butts in the seat in hygiene. Put butts in the seat in hygiene. That appointment time is kind of like a seat on the airplane, Naren. If that seat ends up being empty and the plane takes off to go to its destination, then the airline has forever lost the business opportunity from filling that seat. Well, the same thing happens with that hygiene appointment. If that appointment doesn't get filled, you forever have lost the opportunity for that.
Yeah, I mean the staff member you're paying for, so that's an expense, but you don't have any income coming in for that.
Well, let's look at all the consequences.
Yeah.
You have a very high paid individual sitting around. That would be your hygienist. And of course, we all know what's happening to hygiene wages these days. It's going up geometrically.
Right.
But we also miss the exam opportunity with that patient.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And again, when it comes back to benchmarking, let's benchmark for just a minute. One of the goals I'd like you to establish, in addition to hygiene occupancy at 92%, is that in a thriving general practice, let me clarify general dentistry, in a thriving general practice, 1/3 of total office production comes from the hygiene department.
Right.
1/3. Now, what counts as hygiene production? That's a very important qualifier. What counts? There's different ways to compute that, but a simple way to compute that is to count everything that happens to the hygiene patient counts as hygiene production, with the exception of doctor exams. Doctor exams, of course, should be credited to the doctor. But everything that happens, for example, the assistant might take the x-rays if their x-rays were required. Well, that still counts as hygiene production. If we do some ancillary services like fluoride or sealants, it wouldn't be common to be doing whitening, but if we did whitening, something like that, if we do fluoride trays, whatever we do for that hygiene patient would count as hygiene production. And very often, what do I see, Naren, when we're starting with the client, we go through this data. One of the things that I see is very often this category is underperforming. What we commonly see is, even in very strong practices, the total percent of hygiene production is 20%, 21%, 22%. And even in the teens, 18, 19%. And what that simply means is lots of lost opportunity to develop and build your practice. Lots of lost opportunity. And there is a direct correlation to hygiene, butts on the seats in hygiene, and doctor productivity because of the exams.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity to cultivate exams and revisit unscheduled treatment plans every time we see the hygiene patient. So, that all results in a stronger practice. Stronger hygiene equals stronger practice. Now, I know some doctors are going to say, well, Gary, I feel like I'm totally stretched doing exams. I don't know that I could do any more exams. Well, I get it. And I think it's fair to say that even 2 exams an hour are a challenge. They can be done, but it's a challenge. And when we start to if we go to a 3rd exam during the hour for the doctor, that's where the wheels really fall off. So one of the things you might consider, if you're in a situation based on the way your schedule is set that you have to do more than 2 exams an hour, one of the things you might consider is identifying at least 1 patient an hour that doesn't need an exam. Ideally, that would be a periodontal therapy patient that doesn't need an exam. Or it could be a healthy adult that had no unscheduled treatment in a treatment plan. If it was a healthy adult, but they had unscheduled treatment, we want to see the patient so we could talk to them about that unscheduled treatment. And I'm not going to suggest that can be done 100% of the time, but if you start to run that filter through, you might see the opportunity to significantly reduce the number of times during the day where you have to do 3 exams an hour. And I'll give up the hygiene exam fee every day to create more sanity for the doctor on the doctor's schedule. Does that make sense, Naren?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's go back to what do we do to get to 92%? First of all, have a dedicated hygiene scheduling coordinator. Secondly, now that you have a dedicated hygiene scheduling coordinator, set up your practice so that person can excuse themselves from the hubbub of the front desk when needed to focus on filling the hygiene schedule. So set that up somehow in your practice so that that individual can go to a workstation away from the hubbub of the front. And what do I mean by hubbub, Naren? Checking people in, checking them out, and answering the phones. Because if the hygiene scheduling coordinator has done everything she possibly can to fill the hygiene schedule and it doesn't work out, I'm actually okay with that. But if instead she said, well, I haven't had a chance to work on it because I've been so slammed by the phones, then I'm not okay with that, Naren, because it means that we're not set up to allow her to prioritize filling that hygiene schedule. And, I'll share a solution that we have in one of our client offices is the assistants are cross-trained to do some front desk activity. And so before the hygiene schedule coordinator checks herself off the front desk, she grabs an assistant that can fill that seat so that she can put her head down and work on that hygiene schedule. Very, very important detail. If you don't solve that detail, I can assure you, because I've seen it happen so many times, that your hygiene schedule coordinator is going to say, the phones were ringing off the hook. We had patients with many questions at checkout, and I didn't have a chance to work on it. And that's going to come back and haunt you because you haven't set up a system to be able to handle that. The third detail that I have to get to 92% or more is a very tactical detail that I'd like you all to start doing tomorrow. And that is train your patients, train them that you expect them to keep their hygiene appointments. You expect them to keep their hygiene appointments. Now, how do we do that? At the end of sometime near the end of the new patient appointment, I want one of your business team members to sit down with the new patient, preferably in a consult room, and say something like this: Naren, I'm so glad you've chosen our office for your dental care. We're going to work really hard to take great care of you and make every visit a positive experience. May I take a minute now and explain 4 specific things you can expect from us as an active patient in our practice? And I nod my head. That's a part of neuro-linguistic programming. If I nod my head up and down, the patient's going to nod their head and say, sure. And then I'm going to say, here's the 4 things you can expect as an active patient. Number 1, we're going to treat you like a family member. I know that sounds kind of odd, but we think of our patients as our patient family. Number 2, because of that, we're going to use the highest quality materials, the latest advances, the latest equipment, the latest technology, because that's what we would want as a patient. Number 3, we stand behind our work. Naren, if anything isn't right, doesn't meet our standards, we redo it until it does. By the way, we have a written warranty, and if any treatment is recommended, I'll share that warranty with you. And number 4, we have a protocol for you to reach the doctors, in our case, it's doctors after hours, and I hand them a business card that has that protocol to reach the doctors after hours. So if you're ever experiencing an emergency, or Naren, if anyone in your family is experiencing an emergency, you can reach our doctors after hours. Now, if it's routine, just call the office and leave a message. But I want you to know you can reach the doctors if it's urgent and if it's a dental concern.